Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this virtual town hall. We're so excited for the school year to begin on Tuesday, August 23rd. Just yesterday, we welcomed back all of our teachers, and today our teachers and staff were involved in professional learning across the school division. So we are prepared, and we are looking forward to our students returning, and we're looking forward to a great school year. Now, I know as a parent, before the school year starts, and as a teacher, you're running, you're preparing, you're trying to get everything settled. I believe it's the most important, it's the most wonderful time of the year. I have said that before. It is back to school time, and so I know, but it also can be a hectic time. And as you're kind of going about and you're getting things prepared and ready for the school year, there could be some questions that could be coming up for you. So we wanted to set aside this time so that we can answer your questions and be available to you. And so I want to thank you for being here this evening. I know that you can be at anywhere else. I know that you have lots of other things to do. So we really want to take good care of your time, and we hope that this is time well spent for you. So again, I know that you may have many questions, or at least some questions regarding the upcoming school year. So again, we want to take the opportunity to answer some of your questions that have been submitted ahead of time. We do have those, so if you did submit your questions ahead of time, thank you for that. But also you can place other questions in the Q&A box that you'll see on your screen. So we'll take your questions as they come in as well. So I do want to take a moment to address school safety and security, as there are changes for this school year, as has been addressed at our school board meetings and through robocalls this summer. As you may remember, this spring, we began researching and formulating a plan to add additional safety measures in our schools. So through this process, many new strategies were approved with the budget in June, while additional strategies were also approved during the school board meeting on July 12th. So again, I want to thank you for your input, whether or not you're a parent, a guardian, a staff member, a student, or a community member. We just want to thank you for that input, because of your input and because of our research and what we have, kind of looked across the nation in terms of best in practice, we were able to get those recommendations approved. And it's also because of the hard work of our team. If you are an RCPS team member here tonight, just know that we appreciate you and we value you. And if you're a student, thanks for logging in tonight. We can't wait to see you on Tuesday. And if you are a school board member, we thank you as well for your governance. Our school board, I always say that leadership matters, and we have exceptional leaders on our school board who have a heart for children. So I want to thank our school board for their leadership. So again, we will be implementing over 25 additional safety measures this year, totaling more than $4 million, including things such as, now we have worked with the Roanoke City Police Department and the Sheriff's Department and office as well, and they are hiring and assigning additional school resource officers in our schools. We have a goal of at least one officer per school, and we are getting closer and closer to that goal every day because of that partnership. And we are grateful to the City of Roanoke, and we are grateful to the Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. We also have 3 additional assistant principals this year, so that each elementary school and each of our schools has at least one full-time assistant principal to assist with school safety and with administration. We are also advocating for legislative changes for additional parent and adult accountability when it comes to access to firearms by minors. You have been very clear with us. You have said to us, how are we going to hold parents accountable? You said, Ms. White, how are you going to hold parents accountable? Well, that's bigger than me. It's bigger than the school system. It's bigger than our school board. We are advocating for legislative changes there as well. So that is so that if students have access to firearms that are loaded or unloaded, we believe that there should be consequences for that when it comes to the adults allowing access to those firearms, so if children bring them to school, there should be additional consequences for that. We have also increased mental health supports, and you have been very clear about that, and so you will see the additional mental health supports in place as well, not only for our students, but also for staff as well. And we are implementing a 24/7 safety tip line that can be used to report student or school or well-being or any type of safety concern there. That way they don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until the next day to report something. We have always said, if you see something, say something. Well, we want you to be able to say something 24/7. If you hear of a concern, if you read of something, we want to know right away. So we're really proud to be able to implement this safety tip line. So again, if you want more information on our safety measures, it's available by visiting our website, the School Safety and Security page. It's on the About Us page of the division website at rcps.info. But tonight we do want to get right to the questions that have been submitted that you may have this evening. And I do have members of my team who are with me here this evening to help address your questions. So joining me this evening, I have Mr. Archie Freeman, our Chief Academic Officer. And we also have Mr. Chris Perkins, our Chief Operations Officer. Mr. Dominic McKee, our Chief Human Resources Officer. Mrs. Haley Poland, Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Student Services. Dr. Julie Drury, Executive Director of Research, Accountability, and Mathematics. And Mr. Greg Johnston, Executive Director of Academics. So we have set aside an hour tonight, but we may finish early if we're able to address all of your questions in less than the time allotted. But we are not going to rush. We are going to take our time and go through those questions because you took the time to ask the questions, and we want to do our due diligence to be transparent, to be open, and to be available to you. So let's just get started. And again, if we have any questions coming in, we'll get those as well. I do have Ms. Sandridge over on the side. She's going to hand me any questions that are coming in. So if you see me looking to the side or even looking down, I'm trying to get all of the questions in and be responsive to you. So speaking of safety and security, the first question is, will students have to wear ID badges for the 2022-2023 school year? So the ID badges, that was one of the recommendations that we made to the school board. And there was not a yes or a no on the school badges. It's just kind of a not yet. That's because we do know that there are other capabilities of an ID badge other than just having the ID badge there to know who should be in the school and who shouldn't be in the school, which is critically important. There could be other technological advances that we could tap into as well that we are exploring. For instance, if a child is able to use that ID badge as a library card or as their food service check-in or even as a tap-in system to make sure that there's accountability on the buses and on transportation. So we're exploring that to look at cost, to look at feasibility, practicality. Again, if it's not practical, we don't want to do it. We don't want anything that's too cumbersome for our teachers and staff and administrators, but we also have to keep student safety as our top priority. So again, it's not a yes or a no. It's just our school board wanted a little more time so that we can do our due diligence to see all of the various capabilities, what the cost might be, and if it's practical in terms of implementation. So stay tuned for that one, but good question. The next one, I'm going to go right into safety, and then I'll go to another subject as well. We'll get into, there are lots of questions here on various topics. We have questions on COVID, class sizes, teacher shortages, athletics, and some other kinds of things coming in. So we will try to hit on the various ones so that if we run out of time, we wouldn't just cover one area. We do want to cover the other areas as well, but I'll keep going with safety for now. It says, how would you keep children from bringing firearms to school in their backpacks? And so you may have heard me say before that, and I'll ask Mr. Perkins to chime in here as well, but the way that we see all student behavior is through the lens of prevention, restoration, and logical consequences. And certainly there are consequences, serious consequences, for students who bring a firearm to school. We're also looking at those consequences for the adults. I just talked about that. But the majority of our efforts have to go into prevention. And those are the things that don't sound, as magnificent, but those are the things that really matter. Every time we have been able to really kind of advance the work or to prevent something from happening, it's because of the relationships formed. It's because a student had a relationship with a teacher or staff member or student, and they were able to tell us about it. So it's not just about the things, the equipment, but it's about those relationships and maintaining that so that we'll know what's going on. And so again, it's about prevention, and the majority of that work has to go into prevention and also restoration, meaning teaching what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Perkins, who's our Chief Operations Officer, and safety falls under his leadership as well. Mr. Perkins?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ms. White. So what I would like to do is talk about some commonalities when it comes to incidents in our schools, and then and we use those commonalities of people that, conduct attacks in schools to determine what we can do as a school district. So think of this fact. Approximately 91% of attackers used a handgun, and almost half stole it from a family member. So it's got to start with the parents and guardians in our division. Parents and guardians need to be asking questions. What's going on at school? What's in those backpacks? What's going on? You can help us keep our schools safe. And another way that we can do that is responsible gun ownership. We are blessed, and one of the things that we are doing, this is a response to this, is the city's Gun Violence and Prevention Commission provided over 8,000 gun locks that we're making available to you. And you're probably saying, well, why 8,000? Well, that's how many households we serve in Roanoke City Public Schools. We serve nearly 14,000 kids, but about 8,000 households. So we want to make sure that those gun locks get out and there's responsible gun ownership, so kids can't bring them into school and get involved. The other thing that we're doing is the Family Safety Pledge. We want to make, we're putting this out again. We've done this a couple of times. We want to make sure that's out there, and that is it gives you a conversation as a family to discuss this. Second, we know that attackers suffer from forms of bullying, rejection, and mental health issues. You heard Ms. White say it earlier. We're increasing our mental health resources. We're increasing our counseling resources. We're working on transitioning our students into adulthood in programs like AVID. And so that is a resource that we have available to us to prevent guns from coming into our school. Third, we know that most attackers, and Ms. White mentioned this, that they will tell someone. So if you see something, you got to let us know. And we're making available. In fact, we know that 81% of all school attacks, the attacker told at least one person. And in 59%, we know they told at least two people. So if we can make the process easier, where people feel comfortable telling us what we need to know, and that's where that 24/7 hotline comes in. That is tremendous for us, and that information we get. And our kids are great. They will come forward and they will tell us, and that's what's keeping us safe. And then last, we know that most attackers there will be recognizable signs. There will be fascination with firearms, fascination with violence. And that's where we use, and we are blessed in Virginia. We have Dewey Cornell, he's a professor at UVA. He created threat assessments with where they are now, and they're used all around this country. And it happened right here in our state. And so we've implemented threat assessment training to get on these issues, risk assessments, to make sure that we bring resources. These are not punitive. These are providing help. And that's how, working with our community and you and our team here, we can keep guns out of our schools. And that's just a few things. There's a whole list that Ms. White referred to that's on our website. Ms. White.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to keep going with safety because I do think that it is top of mind for many of our teachers and parents as well. So I'll keep going for the next couple of questions and we'll jump to another topic. But the next question has to do with primary school doors being equipped with effective anti-terrorist entry locks, it says. So Mr. Perkins, I'll send it right back to you.
Okay, hello again. Thank you, Ms. White. First, let me be frank in this answer. We are not a federal building where we're going to have pylons that pop up and gates that fall automatically. We're a school, and schools are community gathering places. So I want to be clear. We started over 4 years ago making sure that all of our exterior doors have quality locks, and we have double locked door entries at all of our schools, and we have accomplished that. Our schools have double door entries, every one of them. In fact, we're actually going back now, and we're investigating whether or not we have the proper size double door entries in our schools. And 2 of our schools, we're going to increase those sizes. 2, we have locking classroom doors in the overwhelming majority of all of our classes. Now, we do have some open classrooms. We're adding doors to those, but all of those doors lock. What we want to do, though, is make it much more efficient. And so the school board approved us to go out and change out lock sets on every one of our classroom doors. So not only do we have a process for making sure the door stays locked, but now we have the ability for a teacher to quickly ensure from the inside that door is locked, and they don't have to guess and remember. So we've made it simple. So we have invested a lot of time in being able to lock our schools. What?
Thank you. Thank you. The next question has to do with protecting children from bullying, especially on buses. And so for that, I will turn to Mr. Freeman and Mrs. Poland to talk about our bullying, anti-bullying strategies, particularly on transportation.
Good evening. Thank you, Mrs. White. Good evening to each and everyone that is joining us this afternoon or this evening. I just want to start with the fact that we must make sure that we be consistent with our SBAR, which is our student discipline that we're given by our state, Virginia Department of Education. So when we do that, we do have things we've been training with our administrators, also been training with not only administrators, but administration will be training with their teachers about discipline policies and procedures. With that being said, I'm going to ask Ms. Poland to share a little bit of that information this evening.
Good evening. We have a bullying hotline that we want our staff, our parents, our students to be able to use. We take our bullying investigations very seriously. We want to make sure that we are informed. If we don't know, we can't help. So please reach out to your school counselor, school social worker, your administrator. Make sure that if you are not feeling like you are being respected and treated appropriately in the buildings, or if your student isn't, utilize our resources, utilize our staff, make sure that you're letting us know if there is an issue. Buses are under our control and under disciplinary consequences as well. We want to make sure that our students feel safe at the bus stop and coming to school, and then when they're in our halls and in our classrooms. Please make sure that we have resources and we have the ability to intervene. But that prevention and intervention and logical consequences, it also works for bullying. So if your child comes home, or if you are a student and you feel uncomfortable, please make sure that you're telling us early and you get an adult involved. We have adults, your teachers are there, your administrators are in the hallway, your school counselors, your school social workers. Please make sure that you are telling an adult so that we can help and we can intervene and make sure that you're safe.
Thank you. And it's important to keep in mind that bullying is just, again, it is just not tolerated in our school system. No one sends their child to school to be bullied. No one sends their child to school to be hit or kicked or threatened in any way. School has to be a safe place for our learners and for our students. And so that's the reason why we provide training to our, not only to our teachers and staff, but this summer, our bus drivers and our bus aides received training. Mrs. Poland did the training for our bus drivers and bus aides, so that they'll know not only how to recognize it, but how to diffuse a situation and how to prevent it. So these topics, this topic of safety, I just think it's important for everyone to know that safety when it comes to bullying or when it comes to these kinds of disruptive behaviors or threatening behaviors. We have covered this throughout each of our staff meetings, principals meetings, at the meetings with our teachers, new employees, as well as our bus drivers and bus aides. Again, because teaching and learning cannot happen effectively if our students feel threatened in any way. So we want to remove that kind of that layer of tension that kids might have, and we think that investment in professional learning will pay off for us this year, again, especially with our bus drivers and bus aides, and I want to thank them for participating as well. Let's switch gears a bit, and let's head on over to, I'll ask Mr. McKee and Mr. Freeman to help me with this one, and that is on teacher shortages. The question is, and I'll ask Mr. McKee to chime in first, but how will you be addressing the teacher shortages? Will teachers be compensated appropriately if required to teach additional classes? In years past, teachers were only compensated if they hit the student limit, but adding an additional class to a teacher is much more than a duty, and teachers should be compensated even if they don't hit the student limit if they are being asked to teach an extra class. So Mr. McKee, why don't you talk about the recruitment, and then Mr. Freeman, if you can then talk about the second half of that question about compensation. Mr. McKee?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Ms. White. In this division, as you know, everyone is a recruiter. So I'd like to take this time to thank the entire HR department for all of your hard work for the 2023-22-23 school year. And just know that we can't do this by ourselves. I want to also thank academics, special ed, operations, employee health, technology, finance, payroll, communications and marketing, and all school staff, central office staff, school board members, and Ms. White for your support during this recruiting season. We've hired a record number of employees of professional and classified staff. To date, we've hired and oriented over 300 employees and counting for this school year. All of the recruiting and other efforts are paying off now to address the teacher shortage. From January of 2022 until August of 2022, we've hired over 180 teachers for this school year. A big shout out goes to our professional staff coordinator, Doug Martin, for processing every single one of these hires. Now, we typically, on average, we typically hire 125 to 135 teachers each year. So as you can see, we're well above the average, and we have close to 1,100 teachers. So with all of these efforts, we're now under 20 teacher vacancies. So that is a 1.8% vacancy rate. So here's what we've done in terms of trying to address teacher shortage in terms of recruitment. The compensation has helped with the board approved for the raises. We've had multiple job fairs over the summer. We've reached out to our retirees to see if they want to come back and teach either part-time or full-time. We're marketing our opening positions on multiple social media outlets. When applications come in, our Director of Recruitment and Retention, Angela Wimberly, she reaches out to candidates and works with administrators that have openings. And this time of the year, we're most likely to hire either career switchers or individuals seeking provisional license. So our license coordinator, Angela Carr, works with individuals that need to meet license requirements from the Virginia Department of Education to become teachers by taking either the practice and/or certain classes to obtain a provisional license. We also work closely with organizations such as Educate Virginia for career switchers. There also might be grant funding to cover expenses for the practice and/or classes needed for provisional license. We're also going to look at colleges and universities that have summer and early fall graduates across the nation. Another program that we use is our referral program. So our current employees get $500 for every individual that they refer. As long as they sign a contract, they get $250 when they sign the contract, and then after the first 6 months, they get another $250. So there's no limit to those referrals. So the last thing I want to add is, if you have a bachelor's or a master's degree and want to make a difference by becoming a teacher and don't know where to start, we can help you. Just reach out to anybody within the HR department and we'll get you the information you need.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Ms. White.
No, thank you. Mr. Freeman, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again, Mrs. White. Just wanted to make sure that everyone is clear about duty versus planning period. The Department of Education requires us to give each teacher a planning. If they stay under the 150, we can do 6 periods without the compensation. If we go over, additional pay is required. We always are working with our administration along with our assistant superintendent, Dr. Anderson and Ms. Wimbush, about our master scheduling, because we want to make sure that we best do what's in the best interest of our students for our tiered instruction. So I know that sometimes can require some creative scheduling, which will require us to have 6 periods versus the duty period.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Drury, I'm going to turn it to you to talk a little bit about SOL assessments and MAP and how those two assessments differ and why we need to administer both this school year.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Mrs. White. First of all, our SOL through growth tests are required by the DOE. So that's one difference. Our MAP tests aren't required by the DOE. But our growth tests with the DOE, with the SOLs, only measure what students know at grade level. They will go 1 grade level below and 1 grade level above. But that really doesn't help us as much post-COVID when we did have so much learning loss. Our MAP tests are going to tell us exactly where the students fall along the entire learning continuum. So if we have students who are really advanced and above grade level, it will tell us that. If we have students who are struggling and more than 1 grade level below, it will show us that as well. And we can pinpoint exactly where those students are. In addition, MAP is going to tell us where along the continuum that our students are, and it's going to show us which specific SOLs they don't understand. So we might have a 7th grader who is struggling with 2nd grade SOLs, and our MAP assessment will give us that information, but our SOL growth assessments will not. I might add that we did look at the data and compared our last year's SOL test results versus our MAP assessments. And our MAP assessments predicted our students' SOL results in every case at least 85% of the time. So if a student was predicted to fail, then they probably did. If a student was predicted to pass, then they probably did. And that was the case 85% of the time. So our teachers can use our our MAP tests as predictive tests as well.
And just to also keep in mind that, and thank you, Dr. Drury, for that answer and for that response. We are very sensitive to the amount of teach time versus time for testing, and we don't want to over test our students. So we are kind of pulling back on some of the central office kind of created benchmark assessments so that we can have more time for instruction, and we're balancing that a little bit better. But we'll continue to monitor that, again, to look at both our predictive assessments as well as our periodic ones as well. So thank you, Dr. Drury, for that. Now let's go to another topic that has come into us, and that is about monkeypox. And so Mr. Perkins also has under his purview employee health as well, so and student health. So we want to make sure that we're addressing those questions. Now there are several questions here, but I think that they're broken into really kind of two categories. One, it's whether or not we're worried about it. There's some questions there, and it says, with monkeypox being deemed a public health emergency, what's the school's prevention efforts? So one, basically there's a lot of questions or some questions here about how do we prevent monkeypox, and then what will the protocol be should we experience monkeypox among our staff or students. So Mr. Perkins, why don't you chime in here to tell us where we are?
Thank you, Ms. White. So our coordinator of student and occupational health has been on the phone, as you can imagine, with the Virginia Department of Health, our local health department, several times over the last several days. And what we know is this. One, our protocols that we have in our health plan that's on our website for addressing COVID-19 actually helps us with this. But there's a couple of things to be aware of with monkeypox. One, there is no protocol that has been issued by the Department of Health. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, in our region, there's only 8 cases that are known. And across the entire state, there's only 2 that are under the age of 20. So in speaking with our local health experts, they are telling us that if we're implementing our cleaning and we're making sure that we address, contact in certain situations, that we are doing that. So we have processes in place. And some of the directives that have been provided to us is monkeypox is spread through skin-to-skin contact. And it does not spread from person to person through casual conversation or by just walking by someone that's potentially infected. And because of that and our direction, we feel that our protocols that are in place for COVID-19 help prepare us for this, and we'll continue to follow those protocols with regards to our health plan, which is posted for your review to address monkeypox as well. Thank you, Ms. White.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Again, just as Mr. Perkins said, that we're trying to prevent anything, everything that could be problematic in terms of transmission, right? We want to make sure that we're maintaining our cleaning protocols, our air quality protocols, and we are communicating when we experience someone who has contracted anything, that we're communicating appropriately. So we want everyone to be healthy, and we want everybody to be safe, of course. So I'm going to jump back to the subject of safety. And the next question has to do with violence going on in schools. And for this, I'll ask Mrs. Poland and Mr. Freeman to weigh in on this as well. And it says, how are you going to handle the violence going on in the school, all the fighting? I should be able to send my granddaughter to a calm learning school, not what's going on. And so if you want to just talk about some of our protocols and what we're doing to prevent these fights in schools.
Yes, good evening again. I'll take this one. Thank you, Mrs. White. So we have a zero tolerance for fighting. We don't want our students to come to school and feel that they are going to be hurt, injured, or there is any threat of that. We have had a pretty extensive threat assessment training this summer. We are also increasing our ability for counseling and for restorative practices, specifically focused at the middle school level and elementary level. We want to teach our students conflict resolution skills. We also have to know, and part of our tip line that we have pushed in this school year will help us identify issues or concerns or potential threats prior to even students coming to school. So we have to know so we can help intervene. But also we do have logical consequences for our students. We have to make sure that we are maintaining a safe environment. We also need help from our parents and guardians. Make sure if you know something is happening, or if you hear that your student is upset with another student, please reach out to the school. Let's mediate between the students. Let's teach conflict resolution skills, and also teach and please reiterate, we cannot have students engaging in unsafe and in fights in our buildings. So please reach out, please communicate. We are here to help prevent, but we also need your support with that.
Yes, and indeed. And you'll see that kind of constant theme here throughout this town hall meeting. We have to be partners in this work. We have to partner when it comes to whether or not we're talking about a firearm in a backpack, or fighting, or students really getting their work done, right? We have to partner with this. We're wrapping our arms around our students, and we are partnering in this work as parents, teachers, administrators. We come together to support our children, to hold them up, and to also hold them accountable, and to monitor what they're doing, watch what they're doing, listen to whom they're talking to, and what they're doing even online, and reminding them of what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. And we're going to set those ground rules very early on, first day in our schools and in our classrooms. It's important for our kids to know where the boundaries are, and they need that structure. And whether or not they want to admit it, they want the structure too. So students might argue with me on that one, but they want that structure, and they definitely need it. Let's keep going. Now let's go to class sizes. And Mr. Freeman, I'll ask you to help me with this one. And the question is, I thought it was said at the school board that we're going to be reducing class sizes. My middle school is eliminating a class to use time for remediation and going to 30-person classes across the board. Why? So again, our recommendation to the school board that was adopted, especially when we're hiring additional teachers, we are working to reduce class sizes in the core content areas initially, and we're going to continue year over year with the budget request to reduce class sizes in other areas as well. But our start was in the core content areas. And so, Mr. Freeman, do you want to take it from there?
Thank you, Mrs. White. Good evening once again, and thank you for the question. Mrs. White, you already set the foundations. As we're working very hard with our school administrators, schools are still modifying schedules as needed. They will continue to do so over the first few weeks of school, because we have to make sure that those individuals that are going to come to school show up, make sure that individuals haven't moved. So I'm sure there will be some adjustments. We know that meeting students where they are include remediation, so we must develop tiered instruction for academic success in the classroom. Building administrators will continue to review that data and make changes as needed, because we got to make sure we're doing this what's in the best interest of our students. So we will continue to review those. We will look at that, work with our administrators, and move forward with best decisions for our students.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. All right, I'll take the next one, and that has to do with COVID-19. It says, with the increase of COVID cases in our locale and nationally, are mask mandates likely to be put back into place? And so right now we're going to keep our masking optional, as we did in the spring, for our staff members as well as for our students. This is in alignment with the governor's order. It's also in alignment with the CDC and the VDH, with the Virginia Department of Health, I should say. And so we have been very consistent with following the guidelines that have come through, so that we can make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. And certainly we're not going to deter anyone from wearing a mask, and we will have them available for anyone who needs one and who would like to wear one. And if you want your child to wear one, we will have them available. but we are not mandating masks at this time. Again, we're following the governor's order as well as the Virginia Department of Health's recommendation there as well. But keeping along those lines, let's just keep going with COVID-19. And Mr. Perkins, this one will fall to you. What will be the new COVID-19 precautions for students and teachers for schools in high transmission areas? Will there be a quarantine time or test to stay program in place? How will positive cases be treated when reported? Will the same masking guidelines be in place? So can you just talk a little bit about quarantine and test to stay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So we're following the recommendations, as you said, Ms. White, about the quarantine times. VDH no longer recommends quarantine for asymptomatic students, teachers, or staff in K-12 childcare or day camp settings. There's also, or after a close contact exposure. Positive COVID-19 cases will be reported to school staff, and that individual will be asked to isolate for 5 days. On the 6th day, if they're able to wear a well-fitted mask and are fever-free for 24 hours, they'll be able to return to school for days 6 through 10. We are still offering testing. It will be available for our staff. And that is not mandatory, but it is available every Tuesday. And we are also offering tests for our students in situations that parents or guardians would like. We have those tests available that will run through our nurses and our partners at Carilion. Thank you, Ms. White.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. The next one, let's just switch to instruction for a little bit. And this has to do with virtual and asynchronous days. And so, and I'll take this one. And the question is, will we have some days in the schedule like last year for asynchronous learning and to catch up? And I know that those days were very helpful. We deliberately and intentionally embedded those days. Keep in mind, however, we've had to weigh the loss of learning and the loss of instructional time when we're doing that. So we do realize and appreciate that our teachers need some time. They need time. You need time to plan. You need time set aside for think time. And so we have built in professional learning days. They're not asynchronous days, but these are the professional learning days embedded throughout the year. Mr. Freeman, how many of those days do we have for this coming year? Is it 3? I believe there are 3.
Yes, ma'am. I believe there are. You're correct in saying there are 3. There may be some minor adjustments we need to make throughout the year, which we would keep everybody communicated with in a decent time.
Yeah, but this year we really do have to get our students back on track. We need our students in school every day. We need our teachers in school every day as well, but we need our students. We need to make sure that we're improving attendance. We need them there. And we also know the effects of isolation, right? When our students were isolated during the pandemic, it had an effect on them. And so what they need at this point, we believe as a school system, is that consistency. We need to make sure that we are there for them and that we are addressing their achievement. So that's closing gaps in achievement, closing those opportunity gaps, making sure that we're accelerating learning and that we are consistent through the school year, consistently differentiating instruction appropriately so that our students are getting what they need. We do know that we have some gaps to fill. We have some work to do. And this is a results year for us so that we can make sure that our students get caught up. And then for students who are accelerated, we want to make sure that if they have the enrichment activities that they need as well. So we're not having the asynchronous days this year, but we have built in that professional learning time for our teachers and staff because we know how critically important that is. Let's switch to athletics a bit, and I'll ask Mr. Freeman to jump in here. This one says, shouldn't all the cheerleaders be allowed to travel to each game to support their team for football and basketball season. Why does Roanoke City Schools take so much fun away from the students? Mr. Freeman.
Thank you again, Mrs. White. Of course, we don't want to take the fun away from our students. We want to make sure that we continue to promote positive school culture and climate so students can be more involved with different organizations, club, and different extracurricular activities. And student sections at our games, we promote that. We want our students to be more involved, and I know our building administration wants that too. It has been our practice, though, to only have varsity cheerleading travel to the select away football and basketball games. Due to travel on a weeknight and class time missed, we want to make sure we're providing the best experiences, but ensure that our athletes are also student athletes first. The head cheerleading coach works with the athletic director and the school administration regarding final decisions on games to be in attendance. So that's one of the things we will continue to promote, is that they are in attendance, but they are always working together that would best fit the needs of our cheerleaders, making sure that we are available and best promoting our school climate. Thank you, Mrs. White.
All right. And Mr. Perkins, I know that in terms of safety, I want to go there because just along those lines with athletics, it says, why didn't last season the Patrick Henry and Fleming cheerleaders participate at the basketball games? And so, you know, again, it talks about the fairness of it all and why that wasn't the case. And I know that there was a safety aspect to that. So would you like to chime in there?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I want to talk about this as far as, let's talk about the gyms. And the last several basketball games between the two, we have outsiders come in and have started fights. And those fights have created tremendous concerns for our student athletes. And if you think about the size of William Fleming has an entryway at their gym. And they have the ability to have cheerleaders on either end of the court. Unfortunately, Patrick Henry does not. And we have a fire marshal issue. If we have to evacuate that gym and I've got cheerleaders lined up at those doors when you come into Patrick Henry, that creates a safety concern. It's not about taking fun away from our kids. It's about being fair between the two high schools. So if only the cheerleaders could travel to William Fleming, that wouldn't be fair to Patrick Henry when they don't have the room and we have a safety concern. And it came up at the basketball games. And we also have a concern about the number of people. Remember, we've been in a pandemic and there's been safety concerns about the number of people. And these are well-attended games. So when you add the pandemic, you add the fights that have occurred from outsiders coming into our athletic events, and the fact that we have an egress and ingress issue at Patrick Henry, it boils down to, in order to be fair, we let William Fleming cheerleaders cheer at William Fleming and Patrick Henry cheerleaders cheer at Patrick Henry. So our cheerleaders are safe because our gyms simply are not of comparable size. And we do not have a location at Patrick Henry to have two squads at either end of the gym because of the ingress and egress of our doors. Thank you, Ms. White.
Sure thing. And along those lines of safety, there's a question here about why do you have to pay to get games online, to get into games online? So again, we encourage everyone to use our online system to so that we can have kind of an advanced count. We can know what our numbers are going to look like. There will be a cash option this year for you to get into the games. So there will be a cash option for that. But we would still encourage you, if you can, to go online and purchase your tickets online so that we can have a close to an accurate count. We know that we can't have a total accurate count because we won't know how many people are going to pay cash, but we need to have a handle on our numbers, and we want to make sure that we're staying safe all the way around. So if you can pay online, we encourage you to do so, but we will have a cash option this year. I'm going to now jump back to mental health. So Mrs. Poland, I'll ask you to chime in here. And it says, what plans do you have for the mental health issue our schools are facing? And then in addition to that is, do we have additional counseling available? Is the staff being advised on what to look for in terms of mental health issues in children?
Thank you. So we do have additional school counselors that we have hired. We also have additional school social workers and school psychologists that we have on staff this school year. We are continuing with our trauma-informed care. So I briefly went over that last week with our brand new teachers coming in, but that is, it goes right in line with our responsive lesson plan template, with our social emotional learning that all of our teachers are receiving this week through our professional learning opportunities. But we want to make sure that our school counselors, that our mental health providers are available for our students. Thanks to our partners at Blue Ridge Behavioral Healthcare, we have 2 additional master's level therapists that are available in our elementary schools this year. Last year, they worked directly with our middle schools, and we saw a wonderful resource and the ability to connect our families with outside counseling services, and to provide and to remove some barriers for those counseling services. So thank you to Blue Ridge for being able to add additional counselors in our buildings. We also have behavior specialists. So thanks to the school board and to our recommendations that went through with the safety committee, we have moved some central office positions into behavior specialist positions that are able to serve and support our students and our teachers to be able to work through behavioral concerns. And that's a great opportunity for us. If it is more of a mental health concern, we can work together, because we have to come together as a team, including our parents and our guardians and our families, to support our students and our families if they're struggling in the home as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to switch over to the schedule. There's a question here about the schedule. I'm going to ask Mr. Freeman if he'll chime in here. So the question is, why can't Roanoke City, Roanoke County, and Salem all get on the same schedule, at least for breaks like winter and spring? I know our schedules have been set 2 years in advance, but does that mean that they can't be changed, leaving no option but to have divisions match Roanoke City? There are so many families affected by this, and it's such an easy solution. So, Mr. Freeman, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you again, Mrs. White. Thank you for the question. We have received this question quite a few times, and we want to make sure that, in case someone missed it, we know that the process is there. We want to share the process with you. There is a committee that is established that has parents, teachers, instructional assistants, other individuals that have been recommended by school administration, principals, and central office. The committee is given a task with all the parameters given to us by the Department of Education. And the committee is asked to make sure that they meet in subcommittees. They're charged with providing multiple calendars to be reviewed and voted on. During the process, calendar information is discussed from surrounding districts. So yes, we do make sure we look at that information, we include them. Some of us have personal contacts that we make to individuals that are in the central office in those locations to make sure that we're all on the same page. The open vote is given by faculty, staff, and the public. So when the calendars are condensed and worked upon, we put those calendars out there to have everybody's input. We take the information to the board based on the votes and then present the calendar to Superintendent White and the school board for final approval. So we do look at that information. We will continue to monitor. We will make adjustments as needed. I want to make sure, and we go back and review about the calendar, that we did have, and as I stated earlier, some professional learning days. There are 4 actually throughout the school year, 2 that we've already taken, and I want to make sure that clarity of today and tomorrow. So throughout the rest of the year, we have 1 in October and 1 in March. So we try to make sure we limit those days to give opportunity to be back in the classroom. There are a couple of days on the calendar also that will be early dismissal for teachers to be able to work in their classroom. I failed to mention that earlier, Mrs. White, so I wanted to clarify that point. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And there's also a question here about new curriculum. Will my child be engaged in new curriculum this year? Mr. Johnston, can you chime in there where we have areas where we have new curriculum this year?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mrs. White. We do have some of the new additions this year focus on our science textbook adoption that we just adopted in July. That is based on the new standards for the Virginia Department of Education. And so we have new textbooks that will be coming to 4th and 5th grade, also in the middle school and with biology. And that is based on the new standards of learning tests that will happen this spring. The new standards have been progressed through the last several years, and they will be tested this year. So there is a new curriculum working with that. It does provide online access. So that is something that you will have access not only in the building, but also at home if needed, if a child's out sick too. Another good thing about the new curriculum is that the teachers are able to go back in time based on some of the information that we receive from our assessments. If a child is missing some components from a previous grade level, because our science tests are multi-year tests, the teacher is able to go back and review some of those curriculum pieces so that the child has all the components that they need for doing very well on the assessment. The other area that we have some new curriculum is with our world languages textbooks. We did adopt new French and Spanish textbooks for this school year, and we did wait because we knew there was going to be an adjustment to the textbooks. Our textbook committee waited on that, so we do have the most up-to-date textbooks this year, and so we're looking forward to that. All of the other curriculum will stay the same. We will continue to focus on full implementation and high quality on grade level curriculum and the implementation of that instruction each day within our classrooms.
I do, and thank you, Mr. Johnston, for that. Again, we want to emphasize that students, whether or not we're talking about a new textbook series or an existing textbook series, students should be engaging in reading, writing, and discussing relevant material in every classroom every day. It is our non-negotiable. So you will see the rigor increase. You will see more writing. You should expect to see more writing as your students are bringing work home. And so again, look for that and ask questions. We have been very clear that we learn to read by reading. We learn to write by writing. And so students need to do that, and literacy undergirds every other content area. So we want to make sure that we are steeping our practices in authentic literacy throughout our content areas. I'll get to the next one has to do with class sizes as well. And Mr. Freeman, I'll call on you for this one too. It says, the question says, I'm curious and concerned about the equity of class sizes, particularly in grades K to 2. In some elementary schools, the average class size is 15, while others may be at 22 to 24. I find it hard to believe that the educational experiences of these vastly different class sizes is the same. Does the district have any plans to reduce class sizes in the elementary schools so that we can ensure our youngest learners get the proper foundation before entering the SOL grades?
Thank you, Mrs. White. Our division expectation is based on the Virginia Department of Education is to keep our K through 2 ratio to 19:1 in all schools. So we are closely monitoring our elementary upper grades to identify any opportunities to lower our K through 2 class sizes across the school division. So this too, as we begin the start of the school year, is ongoing. We will make sure that we are monitoring the number of students that are enrolled, those that show up physically at bodies in our schools, and then we will make adjustments as needed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I know that we are at the 2-minute warning here, so I will take the last few questions. I think we're coming right down the home stretch, and I do believe that we have answered practically all of them. So I'm going to get through the last few. I'll take the last few myself. And it says, would you revisit the idea of school uniforms? So school uniforms, it's really set in policy. And so if you would like to revisit that, that is something that I'm sure that the school board would like your public input on. That is a policy decision. So that would have to go through that kind of policy protocol if we were to take up the idea of school uniforms. Also, the next question says, since the state included an approximate $1,000 bonus for teachers in the budget for this year, when will teachers be receiving this? And the answer to that is December. So if you are a teacher, you should receive that $1,000 bonus in December. Something to look forward to. Something to look forward to. And then the last question here says, what are you going to do about teacher communication between parents and teachers? That's a big problem, it says. And so we're doing a few things in terms of increasing communication. One, we want to be clear on what's an important message versus what's an urgent message. We know that many times you are flooded with messages or flooded with robocalls. What we are making mandatory right now for our schools is for the schools to pick a day for informational messages to you. So if it's just general information, they choose a day. That way you're not inundated with calls about, and you don't know which calls are crisis or an emergency, or versus those that are just information. We want to tease that apart for you so that you'll know which ones are information. You can depend on it. So your school might say, my informational calls, if I'm the principal, I might say my informational calls are going out to parents on Thursday. That's my time. See, when I was a principal, we called it the Thursday folder, but that was a long time ago and I'm dating myself. But the same concept, it rings true. We want to make sure that you have a day to anticipate and expect informational messages that would come your way. And likewise, if you get robocalls on another day and it says this is an emergency message, you'll know to really tune in and listen to that message. We're also making sure that we are communicating to our principals how important it is for teachers to use the Canvas system and to use our messaging system to keep parents informed of what's going on with your children on a regular basis. That has to do with grading, it has to do with student feedback on their work, also has to do with their behavior. We want you to be partners with us in this work. And so we're doing all of those things to increase participation and communication as well. I think that brings us to the end of our time. I want to thank members of my staff who joined me here tonight, who served on our panel to answer these questions. And we appreciate you sending the questions in ahead of time so that we could have this discussion and we could be available to you to answer your questions. I'm excited about this school year. I'm excited that I know it's going to be a fantastic school year. I hope that you are excited too. Remember that we start on Tuesday. So that's the time for our kiddos to get into bed early on Monday night and lay their clothes out, get everything ready, and let's make sure that they got a good breakfast before they get started. It's going to be a good year, and that's because we are going to stay in partnership. We are one community, and we are one in support of our students. I want to thank you for that partnership, and thank you for joining us this evening. Have a good evening, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks again.